on a long period of time, then you would say that the stock of the beta is 1. Hi guys, and welcome to another video by MentorMe's YouTube channel. My name is Alan Anandan. I'm a CFA charter holder, and today we'll be covering on the Visible Alpha Research Associate interview preparation. And now Visible Alpha, probably a lot of people staying in either Indore or maybe in Mumbai might be able to recollect this name because it frequently hires at a mass scale for the research associate job, right? Now let's start talking about the specific role. Okay, so in this video, what we're going to be doing is we'll be covering the basic role briefs on what exactly Visible Alpha does, and we will try to connect that to what exactly you would be expected to do in that role. And then we try to dive into what are the various ways they try to recruit, what is the interview process, and then finally we look at some deal breakers and tips for preparation. And along the line, we also look at some questions which will form as a reference for you when you will be doing the preparation, because every company is different, and that is the reason why we are making this video series, so that you are able to understand that this for this specific kind of a company, what kind of a preparation is required to be done for you, right? So let's first start with the basic Visible Alpha company as a business, right? So what does Visible Alpha do? Now Visible Alpha is one of those companies. There are many other companies which are into the similar business line, is into data aggregation in the form of providing a platform, right? So now there is another company for which a video will come soon, but Visible Alpha, what it does is it provides research, not in the form of equity research, but in the form of insights, which can be tapped in by a fund manager or an analyst whenever he needs for a specific company or a sector, right? Now, those platform is provided in these 4 areas, right? So first is obviously the consensus estimates of a company's earnings. If there are any specific corporate insights for a company, right? Overall, a data solution for companies and fund managers and other services which are involved, right? So an example would be what is there in front of your screen. Now, this is the kind of insight that they are trying to give you. For example, you can see all the companies on the left hand side, and then they are answering a specific question, that which application software company generates the highest revenue, right? So they have given this insight. Right now, this is what basically an analyst at Visible Alpha is trying to aggregate, right? Let's look at another image. So out here you can see which application software company generates the highest income. So in the first image, they showed you which is the one who is generating the highest in revenue. But at the second slide, they're also giving you who is more profitable, right? So now this should relate to what kind of a job you're expecting, and that is exactly what is there in the job description, right? So if you see here, first line itself is telling you the business, which is prepare insightful financial content from sell side research using a mix of extraction technology and industry respective expertise. That means, there's a key word out here which people should understand, is that they are not doing equity research, but they are referring to sell side research, okay? And using this, they are actually creating some insights which can be tapped into, on a platform basis, like a software, a cloud software, which anybody can tap into, right? So, I mean, if I have to, summarize, beyond this, everything is just a process, right? So, in order to do this, these are the things which are being done to provide that platform to the customer, right? Now, overall, Visible Alpha has been open to hiring, even freshers, even people with premier qualification, and also with a graduate degree. They are pretty open in terms of hiring everyone, right? So let's now move into the next slide. Try to understand their interview process, right? Now, the interview process is divided into very simple 3 stages. One is an online test, one is a face-to-face round, and one is the final selection, right? Now, the online test is a pretty comprehensive test, which involves a written test, which has certain elements of aptitude questions as well as elements of finance questions and some reasoning questions as well, right? Now we look at those questions as we move further, right? So there you go. So that's the first question. Now, these questions are pretty tricky questions. These are not very easy to solve unless you are very, well versed with finance concepts. For example, out here, you can see Naspers original invested in Flipkart in 2012. So in 2012, right, Nasper invested over the years around $616 million, right? Now, you have to understand that the question is not related to Flipkart, the question is related to Nasper. That means in Nasper's balance sheet, right? If you were to categorize them as assets and liability and equity, right? So I will put in the number, let's say $616 million is invested, right? So that is the investment done, right? So that's the first data point. Now after that, the stake in Flipkart was sold to. Now this stake was sold to Walmart, okay, at a price of $2.2 billion, right? Now the critical thing to see here is Walmart will have to withhold 10% of the amount and with the same to the Indian government as a tax deducted, right? Now the question is that what will happen to Nasper's balance sheet? Now the question is whether this transaction is actually over. And the truth is the transaction is actually not over, right? Because even if the stake has been sold, the question does not say the amount has actually, because they still have to withhold the tax. That means the amount has not actually been paid back to Nasper, because if it has been paid to Nasper, then obviously your profit between $2.2 billion that you sold for and $6.61 billion, whatever the difference you made, should come in the income statement as a profit from sale of investable securities. But that has not actually happened. So the transaction is still in process, and till the amount comes, there obviously will be no change in the status of the balance sheet, right? So that requires you to know what will happen with investable securities treatment in the financial statements. The next question is related to, I have purchased 100 Infosys stock yesterday at 1000, right? Now there's a negative beta of 1.5. So here the question is trying to assess whether not only do you know what is beta, but how does it affect the stock price, right? So if you see, whenever we are saying beta, it means if there is Nifty out here on the left hand side and the stock is on the right hand side, if Nifty goes up by 1% and if the stock goes up also by 1% on a long period of time, then you would say that the stock of the beta is 1, right? But out here, what is happening is it's got a negative beta of 1.5, right? That means if the stock out here is Nifty is going up or going minus 2%, then if it has a negative beta of 1.5, that means we are saying that the stock will increase by 3% because it's got negative correlation, right? So that means that the stock 1000 should ideally be increasing by 0.3%, which is nothing but 1030. So you can understand that just knowing the beta is not enough. You also have to understand what are the effects of it, right? So let's move into the next question. Now this is a typical aptitude kind of a question. They're trying to reason how you think. So you are saying that two circles. So he's saying two circles is a sphere, right? A triangle and a cone. Okay. So I'll just try a cone is a circle and a triangle. Sorry, a circle and a triangle is a cone. Two triangles are a pyramid. Then what is a circle and a rectangle? Okay. So now you should have practiced these questions in order to even get into a situation where you can actually answer this. Now, in my opinion, the answer should be a cylinder, because if you see here in any of these, whenever you look at a cone, it's a combination of a circle and a triangle, right? And if you keep on adding spheres, circles, then you get a kind of a sphere structure, right? But when you look at a cylinder, it's a circle, and actually the outermost regions are actually nothing but a shape of a triangle, rectangle, right? Now, the third question is related to, at a college, 65% students are studying maths, 80% students are studying English, 90% are studying French, and 85% are studying German, right? What the question is, what percentage at least must have studied all four, right? So a simple way to solve this is to first find out if the 65% are studying maths, then how many are not studying maths, right? So that means that is about 35%. If 80% are studying English, then how many are not studying English, which is 20%. If 40% are studying French, sorry, there is 90% are studying French, then 10% are obviously not studying French. And if 85% are studying German, then 15% are not studying German. Now, if you add these all, so that would be that's 55, 65, 75, and 80%, right? So that means 80% of the students are not studying individually these subjects, right? That means if I do 1 minus 80, that means 20% must be studying all these four subjects, which is the right answer, right? Now, the last question type which you can expect in the Visible Alpha interview is and usually this can also happen when they try to tell you to do this live in the class, or sorry, in the meeting, the interview meeting, where they will give you this kind of data, and then you are expected to make a financial model on this, right? Now, I'll quickly try to take you through how the best way to solve this model is, and I'll switch into my Excel model. Alright, so what I've done is I've just copied the question to this Excel file so that I don't have to really move into different slides while I'm explaining this. So based on the following, prepare the financial statement for Hotel Hilton for FY 218 actuals and FY 2019 expected. That means 2018 data is available with us, and 2019 is what we need to forecast based on the assumptions that are actually given, right? So you can see here the company reported a total revenue of $100 billion in FY18 and achieved an operating margin of 40%. So what we can do is, first let's just write down the line items. Okay, so this is also called line items because they want to check how you think in terms of the financial statements understanding, right? How does the values get put into that system, right? So, and I'm also just try to reduce the size of this. So revenue of that is $100 million. Okay, and then and we can just write here 2018 and this is 2019. Okay, so the operating margin is about 40%, right? So if we just write here OPM, which is at 40%, so that means we are getting an EBIT of this multiplied by this, right? And it has paid 10% interest on the $100 million fixed rate debt. So just below here we can just write debt as 100 million, and we know that interest has been paid as 100 multiplied by whatever rate has been given, right? So we can either keep it here, the rate. So the rate is as 10%, right? So 10% dollar fixed rate debt maturing at 2025, which is irrelevant. But yes, we have paid an interest of 10. Now we reduce the 40 minus 10, which gives us 30, right? Now the company has 100 sales staff. So we can just write here sales staff of 100 and salary is 5 million, right? Since we are looking at million as the unit, so then I don't have to do that. And additionally, monthly corporate expenses of 500k, right? So that is monthly corporate expenses is about 0.5, right, million. And if I actually just multiply that into 12, then I get the annual number. There you go, right? 6 million. Applicable tax rate is 30%. So let's just write here tax, and to just write the assumptions to the left, I'm just going to write 25%, oh sorry, 20%, and average shares. So actually I can calculate the tax and I can get the PAT here, which is 30 minus 6, right? Now these numbers are given, the sales staff numbers are given, but we've already been given the operating profit margin, so we don't really need these numbers at the moment, right? Now for FY 2019, revenue is expected to grow by 10%. So let's increase that revenue by 10%. So we can actually just put the 10% here. 100 into 1 plus 10. There you go. Right? As compared to the FY 2018 gross margins, corporate expenses tax rate will be the same. And it's expected that there will be no salary increment, whereas there will be 1% incentive per 10 room booked for sales staff. So what they're saying is that there will be no salary increment, whereas there will be 1% incentive per, ignore the spelling mistakes here, but there will be 1% incentive per 10 room booked for sales staff. Okay, so that means we're talking about a 1%. Okay, so there's a 1% incentive per 10 room booked. So what is the criteria? 10 rooms booked. Okay, now it depends whether this information is actually given to us or not. Right, Hilton decided to pay back debt in mid 2019 with 15% yearly exit penalty. Okay, so that means if now this has been repaid, so that means we are saying that this has gone to 0. But unfortunately, there's an extra expenses which have been incurred as 15%, right? So that means around $15 million of penalty has been paid for early exit, right? What will be the net income, right? So now obviously operating margins we are expecting to be the same, but there's a 1% incentive for 10 room books, right? Now obviously there's no information as to how many books how many rooms are booked, but let's say we decrease the margin by 1% because we're saying 39%. Even if one person is not able to do at a gross level, that kind of incentive will be paid, right? So EBIT automatically gets calculated, right? The interest unfortunately is not there because the debt only got repaid, but there's a penalty of 15, so that comes as a loss, right? So that comes as an expense, and we are left with EBT at 24.9, and tax is that is, I should have put a dollar sign here, and PAT becomes 22.32, right? Now let's also look at if we have left out any other expenses. I think there was a expense which we probably did not consider, or we have considered, because the expenses they've already said that the gross margins, corporate expenses, and tax rate will be expected the same, because corporate expenses, even though the number is given to us, for the last year we were directly given the operating margins, and they said that the margins will remain same, right? So that means basis the limited data that has been given here, we can clearly see that the PAT is expected to come to be around 22.32, right? So that is what has been asked here. Now, so you can see here, you were not expected to solve the entire model, but they gave you an extract, and basics the extract, they're just trying to understand whether you're able to understand, how to use bits of information, part information, and derive, the final numbers, right? For example, in this case, what information was given is that, okay, the debt got repaid, right? So the debt becomes 0. So there's no interest, but there's a penalty of 15 which came up, right? Similarly, they also try to check whether, you understand that, if an incentive of 1% has been introduced and everything else remains same, what will be the effect on gross, EBIT margins, right? So that was again one of the linkages that got tested, right? And similarly, apart from that, they also were trying to give you extra bit of information which was obviously not necessary. For example, average shares outstanding was given as 10,000K, but they never told you to calculate EPS, so there was no need for that information. So there are some information obviously which does not give you that. It is obviously not needed, uh, and that's the kind of question that they might test you live when they are taking the interview face to face, right? So that's one kind of an information, one kind of question which can turn up. Finally, when you have done the online test and now you are sitting face to face with the interview, what kind of questions can be? Well, the structure does not change much. The only thing is whatever you got tested in the online test and the case test, now they will try to ask you directly these questions, right? For example, how do you calculate the book value share? Now these are basic theoretical questions, right? Linkages of three financial statements, right? You cannot do that case unless until you understand how these three financial statements actually work. What are the non-cash charges other than depreciation, right? Which you might have to actually adjust in our financial statements, right? Specifically in the income statement, the charges which are non-cash charges apart from depreciation. But don't answer like let's say just saying that the other cost of non-cash charges is just amortization. There can be other type of non-cash charges as well, right? Let's look for the fifth question is, where is the stock-based compensation recorded in the statements? We need to know how does our option plan expenses get recorded in the financial statements, right? Is it recorded in the direct expenses or is it not, right? Then what is our enterprise value? And here the answer should be not just related to the formula but also its application. That generally when we are trying to acquire a company, that is the time when we actually refer to the concept of enterprise value. So that is a detailed video on Visible Alpha interview preparation for the research associate position. And now obviously I can keep on going on with keep on solving questions, but obviously unlike our class where we do this on a more detailed manner, I think that is the very concise and summarized information that might help you in the interview. So I hope you like the video. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like our videos, and I'll be again back with another interview preparation video. Bye bye.